you know, the problems going on with the VA. And you hear it every election cycle. You know, something has to be done. Congress has the oversight. Congress has to crack down on the abuses, on the waste, on the corruption in the VA. And, you know, it needs to be, it's not necessarily that there's not enough money, but that needs to be looked at, and if more money needs to be allocated, that's one of the functions, the core functions of our federal government is the military. And it needs to be straightened out. You know, Johnny's gonna be one congressman out of many, and Steve mentioned passion. You know, Johnny has passion. He has so much passion that when he lost the last time around, right, he didn't make it past the primary, he kept going at it. He's been at it for nearly 3 years now. And that shows you the level of passion that Johnny has and the commitment he has. And he's gonna go not only fight for the vets and fight for the active duty military as well. Johnny thinks that the military is underfunded, or as far as the pay is underpaid to begin with. I mean, we're paying teachers in many cases more than we're paying troops who are on the ground fighting. I mean, these guys here put their lives at risk. You know, and you know, when we have boots on the ground, they have to be taken care of. And when they come back, we've made promises to them. And Johnny, I know for a fact, intends to fight to keep those promises we made to those people because they deserve it.
Well, I'm not a vet, so I don't have the personal experience of knowing about that, but I have had the great opportunity of meeting many vets, and I was speaking to someone at one of the functions in Los Banos, and they were talking about how long it's taken them to get medical treatment and how they were treated, and I said, well, I'll do one better for you. I'm going to make you more mad by telling you that when I spent the last 3 years working for California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, it was devastating for me to go to prison every day and see rapists, murderers, and killers out there getting internet, libraries, TV, all this stuff. And then I did a 9-month stint at headquarters in Sacramento. So I commuted my last year in law school up to Sacramento, and I would work odd hours. So I'd come at like 6 in the morning sometimes, and I'd see these people sleeping in sleeping bags in the frigid cold, in the rain, with signs and their little military hats saying, I was a vet, I'm homeless, I need your help. And that just broke my heart. What is wrong with our country that we've got criminals living better lives than our vets? I mean, my grandfather gave his life to this country. He died at 48, not related to the military, but he served a long career in the Navy and then was in the National Guard. And he was a first-generation citizen born here, and he was proud to be an American and proud to serve his country. And I thank God he's not alive to suffer with what's being suffered with today, and that needs to be corrected. The corruption in the government needs to have a normal person that sees it firsthand, that hears about it, that knows about it, that isn't used to being in DC all the time, detached from it, because it's a lot easier to move past something if you're not seeing it. If you're isolated from the problem and you're not having to deal with it every day, like the wonder if we're going to have water, if you don't have to deal with that every day, you're not going to be as compelled to have such a passionate argument in office. And I will tell you, we've got a June primary coming up. I hope that you will select me. I think that I am the most qualified candidate as far as my various background of experiences between working for the state and seeing how government plays a hand in things, and then being a farmer, first generation, starting farming in 2006 with my husband and building several viable companies. I really would like to go there, but you know, as he said, Johnny's been pushing his campaign for 4 years, and when it's up in June, if I don't win, one of the people that wins needs to defeat Jim Costa. We need to replace him, and whoever that is, whoever the candidates are that lose, need to get behind that candidate, not plan on fixing the problem in another 2 years. That's not my goal. I don't want to wait another 2 years with Jim Costa. So thank you very much.
All right, Jim, I'm going to warn you. I'm going to go over 2 minutes here. But that's because this question for me is pretty personal. And so I'm going to start with the budget that you talked about, the Ryan Murray budget. Military pay for retirees and some other benefits, as well as some TRICARE money that went to TRICARE clinics, was cut in this last budget. And what we're talking about are promises that were made to folks when they were 18, 19, 20 years old, when they signed up. Those promises being broken then after they're out of the service. Right? So if young Americans, young men and women, are going to make a promise to serve this country, which thousands do every year, then we have to uphold that promise. We have to keep that promise. And the budget that was passed didn't do that. And so I do have problems with that. Now that doesn't mean there aren't ways that we can, cut into budgets, right? 7% of the federal budget every year is estimated to be fraud, waste, and abuse. 7%. It's about $300 billion. There's plenty that we can cut smartly with good leadership. You talked about the A-10 Warthog. Now, just last year, I was underneath the A-10 Warthog as it was delivering its payload to insurgents on the ground in Afghanistan. It's a fantastic piece of equipment, right? We called it in several times, and it saved our bacon. But that doesn't mean that there aren't other pieces of equipment that can be used. And that's where leadership, good leaders, need to drill into it and figure out what else can we do, right? That's how you solve problems in the budget, right? That's what families do at their dinner table every year, right? They drill into what we need and what we don't need. Where can we, allocate resources? What can we change? That's what Congress should be doing. The VA system, and this is why I'm going to take a little bit longer. The VA system is pretty personal to me. There are about 1 million backlog cases in the VA. I'm one of them right now. All right. So I don't know who else is having trouble with the VA. I'm currently backlogged in the VA system, right? The VA system is a mess. It is an absolute nightmare. And once again, we're making promises, right, or we should be making promises to take care of young men and women, young Americans, who are making the biggest decision that any American can make, that to serve their country, when they're 18 or 19 years old. And we have to uphold that promise through the lifetime of that contract, which is their life. The VA is not doing that. The VA is the second biggest federal department in the government. After the Department of Defense, it is the biggest department in the entire government. And it has only grown in the last 10 years or so. But I don't think by anybody's metrics would anyone say that it's gotten better in the last 10 years. We've simply thrown more money at it and thrown more bureaucracy at it, and it hasn't gotten any better. Right? About 1 million backlog cases. Now, you spoke a little bit about the scandal that's going on in Phoenix, and General Shinseki was up, or Secretary Shinseki was up today on Capitol Hill talking about it. I say General Shinseki because he was Army Chief of Staff before, previous life. The VA needs to be completely overhauled. There should be an independent commission appointed by Congress to dig into what is going on in the VA. Folks talk about it. It's very easy to talk about the VA for 2 seconds and then move on from it. It is such a complicated problem that most folks are very unwilling to actually roll their sleeves up and get into what the problem is.
15 seconds.
Okay. I will do that. All right. Not only will I do that to solve my own case, but my friends and my soldiers, who I made promises to, who I served, deserve that care for the rest of their lives. Thank you.
Well, there's a couple of different issues there that I'd like just to address very briefly. Yes. Number one, we have to hold our people that are in government accountable. And we see this every day where people are just not held accountable. And we have another situation where somebody's up in front of a Senate committee again, and they're trying to ask tough questions and unable to answer the tough questions. We've seen it with the Obamacare rollout, with the website. We've seen it with Lerner and the IRS. And we've seen it with other problems, and we need to hold those people accountable. And we absolutely need to make sure that they're prosecuted to the extent that they do something criminal, and we need to make sure that we have the best. And if it's not criminal and they're just not doing a good job, then we need to replace them. So that's the first thing, accountability. And what I like to do here today, obviously, is we have a congressman that needs to also be held accountable for some of his votes and what he's done, and we like to hold him accountable. And so that's what we're all here to do. And we need to replace him. He didn't do anything criminal, but we need to replace him. The second thing is funding for the military. The funding for the military has fallen to pre-World War II levels. It's our preeminent duty as a government to make sure that we have national defense, and we need to make sure that we do that. We've taken our eye off the ball, and we've misprioritized our money. A lot of it just goes to debt. So we need to make sure that we prioritize what our main functions are, and our number one obligation, going back to the revolution, is national defense. So that's two. Number three, with the VA, what this reminds me of is look at what a mess the VA is. Okay, we're in a place in our society right now where we're trying to have a government takeover of medicine through the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare. If you think the VA is a mess, and it is, this is what happens when we have government-run medical care. So unless everybody wants to go to the doctor through the VA system as it currently exists, then we should all get behind Obamacare. But if we don't want to do that, then we need to stop the Affordable Care Act and the negative effects that's going to happen through the Affordable Care Act. That's number 3. The fourth thing, and this is my last thing, is that we need somebody that has the knowledge base to be able to understand the problem and to be able to fix the problem. I was my first job actually in the Navy. I went to Washington D.C. and I got checked into the Navy Yard, and they sent me out to Bethesda, Maryland, where I did what's called physical evaluation boards. And physical evaluation boards are people that are getting out of the military because of a disability. So I'm very familiar with the way the system works and the problems that the system has. There's actually a Navy retirement and a military retirement system, and then that you take that rating and then you go on to the VA. It's a very complicated system, and it needs, just like everything else, like the IRS and these other bureaucracies, these layers of bureaucracy, we need to streamline and make sure that it's operated correctly. And so you need somebody with the ability to roll up their sleeves, understand the legal implications, understand how the system works, and get in there and fix it. So those are the 4 things, really. Accountability for the people that are in government. 2, funding of the military. Number 3, we don't want the Affordable Care Act to be essentially the new VA. And then you just need somebody with the knowledge base to be able to fix the problems. Thank you.
Any questions?
All right.
This is for all of you, this question.
Put the switch on. That one?
That one? I got it, yeah. This question is for all of you. Your stance on fracking and making this country energy efficient and energy, so we don't have to go out to all the other countries in the world and get our oil and our gas. And I don't mean with green energy, because it doesn't work.
I got the mic, I guess.
Yeah, it just keeps coming back.
It's like a bad pen. With energy dependency and any sort of energy, I think the answer is yes to all of the above. We need to be energy independent. We don't want to go and get our oil from people with Sharia law and only rely on Muslim countries to be able to go get our oil. It leads us into all kinds of downward spirals. They're doing a great job with the economy. We have very high unemployment here in the Valley. Places that don't have high unemployment are places like the Dakotas, Wyoming, that have utilized this oil and fracking. The only thing that causes me pause about fracking is the number one thing that I talk about right now is water. And so we need to be very careful that we don't destroy our groundwater, and we need to make sure that if we're going to do fracking in the valley, which I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but we need to do it very, very carefully, because California agriculture is $44.7 billion. We do it very, very well here in the valley. And it's a heritage that I'm very proud of to be a part of as being a member of the San Joaquin Valley. So groundwater right now is a huge topic with groundwater recharge and some of these other things. So to the extent that fracking or anything else would impact our water and our ability to have that, to be the epicenter of that $44.7 billion industry, we need to be careful.
Good leaders create options. Right? Good leaders don't take options off the table. A good leader of any organization, whether it's in government or business or church or anything, will evaluate every possible scenario to see what works. Here in California, we've taken fracking off the table for a long time. There is an energy boom going on in this country. It's just not going on in California. Right? We have extremely high unemployment. Merced County has the highest unemployment in the state, pretty much. Right? Fracking not only addresses that, it also, to your point, sir, gets after the issue of energy independence. Right? There is no reason why our highest national security interests, energy, should be at the whim of other countries, right? And OPEC, right? Countries like Venezuela or Iran. Fracking here in the States can be done safely, right? It is being done safely in many areas, and we could do it here in the Central Valley. We could do it in California. It's going to take leadership. Right? Leaders have to realize that to solve problems, you can't immediately take solutions off the table before you even try them, before you even look into it. Right? Too often, that's what our leaders are doing here. Right? And I'm using leaders with them, and it's probably a little too generous of a term at times for them. Right? Good leaders create options. They don't limit us. Thanks.
Well, I'll just start out by saying, for one, fracking, since it's happening all over the United States but not in California, it's going to be beyond the scope of the federal positions. A congressperson isn't going to necessarily be able to change that, though I would hope as a congresswoman of the 16th district we could compel our state legislators to use their brains and exercise the use of things that we have sitting below our feet to help create jobs. As someone who drills water wells for the last 4 years or so, I use the old school drilling style, which is I have a Buckeye series cable tool rig, which is what they used to use for oil drilling back in the day. And so I know a little bit more about the geology and how things work and how you can easily contaminate the water source. So I am definitely a fan of fracking. I think that they're doing it safely in a lot of places. And instead of having limitations and saying no, we need to work together with the experts in the industry to figure out the path that can be created so that we can do it safely and end the unemployment levels being skyrocketing in the Central Valley. I am also a farmer, so as Steve mentioned, I do care about